You know, Tribe, it's always lekker for me, and there's a South African word, when I get to feature people from my homeland. Now, the man you're looking at is very smiley. If you're listening on audio, it's Dr. Izzy Justice. You can watch this on YouTube too. I would recommend it because he does have some stuff to show. But Dr. Justice, welcome. Hoe gaan het met jou? Welcome to
Yeah,
the
thank
show,
you
man.
so much for having me. As a fellow South African, it's an additional delight. I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm looking forward to sharing some insight with the audience.
I'm embarrassed to say, here's my mea culpa, folks. You know me, I'm honest to a fault, perhaps. I'm just meeting Izzy for the first time now. And I just found Izzy for the first time on social media a few days ago. And that's somewhat embarrassing, but I'm happy to bring you to our audience because you told me this crazy story about you've done 13,000 brain scans on golfers and athletes,
And
and brain
counting.
mapping is a brand new thing. So before we get there, tell us the quick story about Dr. Izzy Justice. I went from South Africa to living now in North Carolina, huh?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much again for having me. I left Southern Africa to come to college here
Mhm.
back in the early 80s. So I am dating myself. I left that area in the height of apartheid when leaving South Africa was almost impossible. It was like winning the lottery of a lifetime.
Yeah.
And part of my, this is interesting, Mark. I'd never even thought about this, but when you grow up with racism like that, especially institutional racism, as a person of color like I am, there's a consciousness in you. You seek to understand why the human condition is such. You
Yeah.
seek to understand what would make one human being so destructive to the other. So if I'm being completely honest and vulnerable with the audience, I will tell you that the reason I'm a neuroscientist is because I've always been fascinated to understand how is it that a white person, even a preacher, could speak the word of God at a church on Sunday, and then on Monday he is abusing people of color. I never understood that juxtaposition, but I knew there was something in the brain that sort of controlled all of that. And my journey to understand the brain made me a neuroscientist. And lo and behold, I have accidentally, not intentionally, done more brain scans on golfers and athletes than any other person. And I'm an outsider to golf, if I'm being completely honest with you. I don't fit the profile of an instructor. I'm just a neuroscientist who looks into the brains and is just fascinated. Last thing I'll say, Mark, is I think the human brain is the most sophisticated, the most fascinating phenomenon in all of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I marvel, and anyone who's listened to this podcast for any length of time knows I'm very holistic as I approach instruction. So when I found you and I found your way of basically keeping a mental scorecard and measuring mental and emotional activity, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Before we go there, you say you're an outsider to golf. Now, I want to put this into context. We're fellow South Africans. You know, we're
Yes,
kindred
sir.
spirits, really.
Oh,
I got to play golf because of our former rules, the apartheid system, you said. Whereas you, a person of color, your involvement in golf was caddying and ostensibly working for us. So, look, thank you. But I want you to talk about that for a second too, because I feel like in the world we sort of live in right now, there's something that people can learn. And I'm glad you're bringing this to a neuroscience sort of a mindset.
yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, caddying was the only option, as you know very well. And, it made you feel like an outsider. It made you feel, because golf courses, as you know, it's like a big park. There are
Mm,
flowers and trees and cut grass and ponds, and it's like a park, and to not have access to it and to be a third class citizen was tough, if I'm being honest. But at the same time, I feel, and so I'll just digress for 10 seconds. I feel like the most underrated event of the last century was the manner in which we ended it. The fact that apartheid ended and not a single blood was shed
yeah.
speaks to the kind of people we are, both people of color and white people. And if it wasn't for de Klerk and other people who said, okay, enough is enough, and the fact that something like that ended without a single drop of blood being shed with the truth and reconciliation work, I am so proud of my countrymen. I'm so proud of people like you that we were able to put that aside and say, no, we're all South Africans. Let's come together for the good of it. And thanks to Mandela and de Klerk for that.
Well, yeah, they were people who were essentially their destiny, where it was F.W. de Klerk, the president at the time, white man who said that's enough and released Nelson Mandela and a few other folks from prison, and that essentially started the new South Africa. And the first free and fair elections, complete elections, were held in 1995. Now, I was in the United States, but my wife was over there, and she says to me, she goes, "It was the thrill of a lifetime to go and stand in a voting line with Gertie, the young lady who worked in their house for them." And she said it was the
Yeah.
thrill of a lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. No, I am proud of us, and I'm really proud of how, we are coming together. We still have lots of issues, like I think every country in Africa does. But I mean, Saturdays and Sundays having braai at someone's house and watching rugby and cricket and the weather and go to Cape Town and Stellenbosch and oh, we have such an amazing country. It is South Africa is so beautiful. Oh my God, I think it's a hidden gem of the world.
Okay, I better stop us because else we'll start talking about
Yeah.
bras. Okay, let's get to the material.
Yes, let's do.
Yeah, I want to start this. You do a beautiful job. I think it might have been one of your videos I watched prior to this call, and you made the analogy to neuroscience, and you've scanned all these brains because that's the control center, that's the holistic. Everything works from the brain, obviously, and you said it's like a road atlas.
Yeah.
And I want you to build that anecdote because I feel like working from there is a great starting off point for the material we're going to dive into.
I agree. What a great setup. I didn't know you were going to do that, but that's fantastic. So I have a son, he's 16 years old. And when COVID happened, obviously we couldn't do much. So we were cleaning out our garage. I've lived in this house for 23 years. So as you know,
Yeah.
stuff just piles up and we're cleaning up the garage. And he finds this 11 by 17, those big road atlas maps. And he's never seen one in his life. And he says, "Dad, what is that?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Every car used to have one." I said, "Well, what is it?" I said, "Well, it tells you where to go." And he said, "Well, why do people have this? Why did they not just use GPS?"
Yeah.
And that is a very good analogy because the road atlas is not wrong. It can still get you where you want to go, but the GPS is so much faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so the brain TrackMan, and that's the name I have given it because I don't know what else, frankly, to call it, because the metaphor of TrackMan or, you know, any equipment like that allows you to see what the eyes cannot see.
Yeah.
So the brain TrackMan, what really changed, what was, in my humble opinion, and this is a biased opinion, I must confess, the game changed in about 2015, 2016 when wireless EEG machine. So EEG machine is what measures the electricity in your brain. The brain has electricity. We've known that for about 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way to measure that is you went to a doctor's office, Mark, and you sat down in a chair and had a big helmet and 50 wires coming out.
Yeah.
Well, 7, 8 years ago, the wireless changed. So I could put it on someone while they're shooting a free throw, while they're trying to solve a problem, while they're hitting a putt. And now I could actually see what the brain is thinking. And that to me is the difference, is that I think that most of the work on the short game and the golf swing and understanding neuromuscular performance was like the road atlas. You're looking at your eyes.
Yeah.
And you're seeing what the eyes see, but you don't really see that in a way that TrackMan, I think, helped us take a lot of guesswork out of what the eyes see. In the same way, this technology, the brain TrackMan, has allowed me to look into, like I said, over 13,000 brain golfers and counting. So it's been an amazing discovery, and most of what I know, if I'm being again honest, was by accident.
Well, you're awfully modest. I do want to highlight this quickly before we go to seeing, because you do have a screen you want to share and a few illustrations, so you can open that up. And while I do that, you mentioned to me prior to the call, or prior to this recorded call, you said, look, the body was first mapped in the 1600s.
Yeah.
But the first time the brain was mapped was in 2008. So this is brand new technology.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, so that's the thing that I think shocks most people, was that there was a Finnish doctor from Finland, Belgium area, that really was the first one to craft the human anatomy. This is where the lungs are, this is where the ligaments are, the muscles, the bones, all those kinds of things. But the first time that the brain was mapped was around 2008. If you think about it, Mark, the brain is the only organ that is heavily protected. It's in a skull.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Unlike the heart, the liver, the kidney, and the pancreas. So, and also when people try to study it, like if you cut the brain open, we found that we paralyzed people. So it was never an area of exploration. And
Yeah.
even when you did the EEG work, Mark, most of the EEG work, if again, just being honest, was done in hospitals in the psychiatric wards. And so this device, which I'm going to show you, but if I may, and I'll pause, but
No,
I want to set the stage of where we are as human beings first.
Okay.
Because we are in a state of living, all of us. We have found ourselves in a state of living that no other species or generation of human beings has ever had. So
Okay.
may I go into that, or shall I pause?
Yes, no, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay.
I'm following your lead now, and for the folks who are listening on audio, you can see what Dr. Justice is doing. We'll do our best for the audio folks to sort of describe it. When you can, go and get your laptop or whatever and go and have a watch.
Well, I can share literally 100 statistics about the human brain that we have discovered in the last 7 years, but let me just share 3 that should alarm everybody.
All right, go for it.
So it's my intention to alarm everybody because that's the condition that we're in, but it's also my effort to give you things that you can do to address that alarm.
All right.
So 3 things. Number 1, the average EEG of a human being today, so people like you and me, just normal people, is the equivalent of a schizophrenic patient from the 1940s and 50s.
Okay.
What that means is that our brains are consuming way too much stimuli than it is designed to do. In any given moment, there are on average 12 different monologues or stories that are playing in our head. And only one of them is the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
So that's number 1. The second thing that I'll tell you is that when we think about lack of focus, in not just in golf and sports, but in life, you're sitting down having dinner with your family, and now you're thinking about what happened 3-4 hours ago at work. So the average time that your mind is going to wander is about 3 seconds.
Okay.
So every 3 seconds, one other story is going to come up that is in that already oversaturated stimuli.
Okay.
And then the last thing I will tell you is when we think of distractions that cause us to lose focus, Mark, we often think about something external, like maybe someone screams in your backswing, or you hear a door slam or something like that. Yes, or your phone rings. Yes, those are distractions. But the number 1 distraction is our own brain.
Huh.
So the real battle in both existence as a healthy human being, but as well as in performance, especially a game like golf where it is non-reactionary. At least when you're reacting like soccer or football or baseball, your brain is reacting to something, but in golf, you're not. So as you stand still, imagine what the normal routine is over a putt, a chip, a shot. 45 seconds, maybe a minute, something like that. How many 3-second intervals are there in that 45 seconds?
Golly, yeah. No, wow. Yes.
So the real battle that I feel that we as athletes, as coaches, as instructors are facing is to maintain focus while the primary distraction is our own brain. Like I said, there's 16 billion devices in this world for 8 billion people. And every day, more devices are sold than babies are born.
You know what?
So the spigot is not going to shut off.
No. Well, here's the thing. I saw a book one time that's somewhere in my collection. I've got stacks of books, and it was called The Battlefield of the Mind. Now, this one had a spiritual bent to it, which made a whole lot of sense. And it's something makes, because it talked about, being able to meditate and settle one's minds and such. But the data you share and the information that you share over there, now I'm thinking beyond golf now and just on the human level.
Yes.
Wonder the incidence of depression and anxiety and all these sorts of things that everyone's sort of taking medication for are ramping up more and more each day.
So my colleagues and myself, all of our data is fairly consistent. I'm very heavily networked in the neuroscience world because I'm a practicum neuroscientist as opposed to a researcher. But the thing that you just shared is very, very true. And what we are finding is that when it comes to mental health and anxiety and sadness and depression and addictions and all those kinds of things, all those people have only one thing in common, Mark. It's not age, it's not gender, it's not economic background, it's not where they grew up across the entire world. Do you know what it is, Mark? Do you want to guess?
No, go ahead.
Their baseline EEG is extremely high. That means their starting point of the noise in their head is so high that routine things that you and I would just brush off, when your brain waves are that high, they spike even higher. And for those kinds of people, you just want anything to quote unquote shut your brain off.
Yeah.
And one option, unfortunately, one option is suicide
Yeah. And drugs and
and drugs.
okay. Just to make sure, because I'm a big one for understanding. I mean, knowledge is one thing, but the understanding of this, I want folks to take away the stuff and really chew on it and make decisions for themselves. EEG, it's an acronym for what is the term?
Electroencephalogram. It is how you measure the electricity, and I'm going to show it to you on the screen
All right.
in just about a minute or so.
All right.
So you will see it. So measuring EEG is not new. What is new is, and you'll see in this picture, for those of you that are watching the YouTube version, you see that I have a device on my head that is souped up by my team.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
I have software that is going to show it.
Okay.
So EEG is essentially the measure of the electricity, and the electricity has two functions, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
One is quantity. So quantity of EEG is basically the number of thoughts that are in your head. And the second thing is intensity. So for example, if I asked you, Mark, to think about the beach and measure the intensity, it would be low. If I asked you to think about a car accident, your intensity would be very high because there are lots of consequences to that. So the more negative a thought, the higher the spike in your EEG. But when both of those things happen, then you are completely screwed. Now, one of the accidental discoveries, and let me go here and then I'll come back to that video.
Yeah, absolutely, go.
So the EEG controls these three things in target sports. So I don't only work with golfers, I work with lots of athletes and coaches in all target sports.
Mm-hmm.
A target sport is where you're trying to send something to a target.
Yeah.
So muscles have no memory whatsoever. The brain, essentially through that EEG traveling through the nervous system, it controls the sequence.
Okay.
Right? So muscles are the slaves to the brain. They simply execute what the brain is telling it to do. They cannot make a decision on themselves. For example, think of a quadriplegic. Their brain works, their muscles work, but the connection is broken.
Got you. All right.
So the muscles control the sequence. So you go back in your swing, whatever it is, putting, chipping, full swing, and then you come back down. That is a sequence. The second thing that the brain controls is force.
All right.
Force is executed by the muscles, but it is not at all. So if you see a hole that's 3 feet away and another hole that's 40 feet away, it's your brain that makes the decision that this is 3 feet away and this is 40 feet away. It's not your muscles. Your muscles don't have any eyes.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing, which I think in golf is the most challenging of all, and if we have time, we'll get into it. If not, that's okay, is target.
Okay.
What I think makes golf, especially short game, the most difficult of any target sport is that your eyes are not on the target.
Yeah, exactly.
So your brain has to remember it. And how is it going to remember it when every 3 seconds it's going to wander?
I want to start. I want to interject right there because this hit me just right in my forehead. So again, the slide for folks listening is number 1, muscle sequence, number 2, force or speed, number 3, target. I had a client. In fact, I came from this lesson to the studio to interview you and talk with you. And so this lady client doing very, very well, hitting wise. Then she said to me, it was a question. She goes, on my short game, I found that on all my putts, I'm just looking at the hole. And she goes, I'm improving so much. Are you okay with that? And I was like, heck yes. If it's working, go for it. Because there's, the reality is you don't necessarily see ball in contact because it happens so fast. But to your thing where you're like, well, you're not looking at the target when you're hitting, is because you focus down on this ball, where she was like, I'm moving my field of vision to the target. And she's finding herself on those short range putts, long range putts begin to improve.
Yeah. So one of the accidental discoveries that I made, and I've watched some of your shows on short game, and Mark, I really need to say this before I make the additional comment.
Right.
I have an enormous amount of respect for golf instructors. I am not here to judge them at all. What I have discovered is an accident. I wasn't looking to do that.
Right.
But what I have discovered through doing those thousands, and I'm going to show one to you actually. What I have discovered is that the things that is typically being taught, like, your grip, your line, your pace, and your aim, yes, those are all variables in putting or in short game, but they're not even close to the most important variables in putting. And the most important variable is, at the end of the day, it's target. Okay. Think about this, I find people spend an enormous amount of time taking the target and then losing it when they go over the ball. How can you play a target sport when you don't have a target to hit the ball to? So I always say, because if there's so listen carefully, if 25% of your routine should be to take a target and 75% of it should take the target. I have found that people fly in from all over the country to take a lesson with me and putting. And I have never once, I swear to God, changed their grip, their putter, their stroke. Frankly, I'm not even qualified.
Okay.
But what I do is that I get their brain to that 5 to 15 hertz, I call it the green zone, which is alpha theta brain waves. If I move the brain to that 15 to 5 hertz, which is that low, there's no traffic in the brain, that allows the eyes to talk to the brain without interference. And when your brain is holding the target, that target is in the present moment. That target is not in the past and it's not in the future. There's only one place in the universe where the past and the future come together, and that's your brain. So shifting the focus to a target and holding that target, suddenly and magically people's strokes improve. Now it's a smooth stroke. Now it's on line. Now it's on plane. Now they're hitting the ball in the middle of the putter face. So I have never changed anyone's putter or grip or stroke and those kinds of things. I just bring the brain waves down, which I'm going to show you now very quickly.
All right.
And bringing their brain waves down, they're experiencing what that woman just said, your client. All because my eyes are down, looking down, but my mind is playing the target. Okay.
All right.
So let me put this video that your viewers that are watching on YouTube are going to see. And if you're listening, you may not see this, but you can go to YouTube and see it.
Okay.
So let's go back to the fundamental premise. So nobody intentionally wants their mind to wander. You don't go over a putt and say, okay, let me think about the last putt that I missed. Nobody intentionally does that. Or nobody goes over the putt and say, don't leave it short. Or nobody goes over the putt and say, you better make it. But yet those thoughts come up. So the magic in dealing with the brain is not to ignore that negative thought. Because if that negative thought has come into your brain, remember, it is a higher frequency. It is going to stop your senses from holding the target. Okay. So the key is to acknowledge that thought and do what I call a neurohack. A neurohack is something that you can do in a matter of seconds. And I'm going to show you one. I'll show you two, actually, on video. So you can see it with the live EEG machine working so you can actually see it. Okay. So the trick is you will never be able to control the negative thoughts that come to your mind because 85% of all brain activity is subconscious. But you need to master the ability to not hit the ball without the target playing in your mind, and when the net thoughts to be able to replace it. So what I'm going to show you now, this is about a minute long, so it's not very long. Right. And in this video, I have the machine on, and you'll see my brain. I'm just going to try to throw a ball. Throwing a ball up in the air is a muscle sequence. I'm trying to throw it up and catch it when it comes down. Mm-hmm. And you'll see all of my brain activity. All right. And you'll see that is going to change. The higher the colors that you see on my live brain, that means the odds that I'm going to catch that ball are going down. So in putting or chipping, if my brain activity is high, and I'm going to show you one in a few minutes, the odds that you're going to make that putt go down significantly. Why? Because something in your muscle sequence, something, the force that you apply, and for sure, the target that you're trying to hold is going to be off. Gotcha. Your backstroke might go a little bit further. You might hit it harder than you want to or softer than you want to. But one of those three things in high brain waves is going to be off. Okay. So let's take a watch here. Hi, Dr. Justice over here. I have the EEG device on my head, and what you're looking at the screen there is a live 3D scan of the activity that's going on in my head. You are seeing two things. You're seeing the quantity of the brain waves that are in my head, and you're seeing the intensity. The brighter the color, the reds and the pinks, that means the intensity of my brain waves are very high. I'm going to do an activity, just try to catch this ball, and then I'm going to try to neurohack my brain. These are the tools that you're going to learn in this program. I'm just going to throw the ball. So you can see all of my brain waves going up and down as I almost missed the ball.
Yeah, yeah, and it's way brighter too in certain times.
So now I'm neurohacking myself.
Wow, the colors have gone away completely almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
But basically, I took my brain in a matter of seconds, as you just saw, from a 5 to 10% chance of making the putt or of being able to coordinate something to almost 100% chance now that I'm going to be able to do that.
Okay.
So that is what we have discovered. So these neurohacks, which is a term that I have coined, these are something that athletes desperately need, because what is their fundamental problem? When you're playing a sport, when your brain waves are high, you cannot say, hey, time out. I'm on the 5th hole. I just had 2 straight double bogeys. Let me go inside, calm down, and then I'll come back to the 6th hole.
True.
Athletes don't have that luxury of time. So they need something that they can do very, very quickly. Let me show you one more. And this is really fascinating. So this is a Peruvian pro golfer. This is my studio in my office. Right. And what I'm going to do is, you'll see as he's over the ball, he's extremely calm. He's about to make this putt. Then I'm going to throw a ball in his face. And you'll see that suddenly that was a big surprise. I've trained him to use one of those hacks to bring without having to step back up and start his routine all over again, without having to do all that again and get his brain back down. So this is, again, you are not, every 3 seconds, your brain is going to wander.
Yeah.
The cause of it is yourself. So we need these kinds of tools in order to get to that green alpha theta brainwaves so that sequencing, force, and target can be held. So take a look over here, Mark. So in the first 3 seconds, I'm going to throw something at him and you'll see how his brain goes up. When his brain goes crazy, which you'll see on the screen, his chance of making that putt is about 5% or less. So take a look. All right, Joaquin, we're about to make this putt, and then suddenly a big surprise comes to your head. Boom, I threw that ball. Look at his brain go crazy.
Wow, yeah. Gee, it lights up.
Lights up. Now he's hacking his brain, he's hacking his brain, he's hacking his brain. Boom.
Now the frequency, the brain waves are lower, right?
They're lower, and look at his stroke. Beautiful stroke.
Yeah.
Now, let me go back and say something, and then I will give it back to you. In this example, the ball was the distraction. It was an external distraction, right? In real life, especially in competitive golf, the primary distraction is not going to be an external ball. It'll be your own thought.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this is why short game is so complex, is because we fail to recognize that, yeah, you might have hit it harder than you wanted to, or you might have hit it softer than you wanted to, or your stroke was completely off. But that's the symptom. That's not the cause. The cause is, in that moment, your mind was wandering and it couldn't possibly hold a target in its head.
Izzy, what you've done is you've essentially, no, I don't mean to sound like a braggart or anything, but, I've always said in my podcast, and a lot of my clients who've taken lessons through all of the years since 1996, I've always said that the best performance, golf in this instance, happens kind of in the sweet spot between physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. It's when all the areas are performing well. And you are proving this, because most golfers, when you hear them, first off, the golf course is built with situations, hazards that can draw your attention to them. And it's like you may as well have a big red beacon saying, well, don't go here. And there's an element of fear or anxiety or whatever you want to call it to that. So then it highlights the brain, right? And then you got to move back to the target. But somewhere in there, you got target in mind, but you're still thinking of that water hazard down the right side of the hole. Or maybe the missed putt that I had just previously. So what you're showing here is it's truly incredible. And to see, for the folks who are watching and for the folks who are listening, it was crazy how you can see the brain activity light up and then go more dull, the alpha theta waves as you reference them. And it's amazing how, with your neuro hack, to use your term, you can take yourself back into that place where you heighten the probability of success.
Yes. And these same neuro hacks can be used in life. You're on a phone call with a customer or a vendor or a supplier or a friend or a spouse, and suddenly the conversation is not going very well. There's a surprise in life also. Mm-hmm. And so the beauty of it is that the brain is used everywhere. And so if you can figure out and learn these techniques that I accidentally discovered, they can help you in all parts of life. But golf has to be made simple. Golf is a target sport. If the target is lost, your mind is going to wander. Unfortunately, your mind wandering is a human condition. It's not a character flaw.
Yeah. Hey, I must ask this. I don't know enough of it, but my mind is wandering now. So for folks who battle depression or anxiety or that sort of stuff, and they get on medication. I'm
Yes.
assuming now the medication dulls the brain activity. Am I going in the right direction?
Absolutely. I am, for most people, again, I have a doctorate in this stuff. I will tell you, for the overwhelming majority of people, the medication is the wrong answer, because what the medication does is that it shuts your brain's ability to recognize threat.
Okay, I see.
And and there are neural pathways in the brain that go to certain glands and certain part of the brain. But living with threats is a good thing. Like, if I see someone that is in trouble, I want to be able to go help them. I want to be able to laugh genuinely. I want to be able to taste the food. I want to be able to live life.
Yeah,
So I work a lot in the mental health space. And what I'm trying to teach people is, look, we become mentally unhealthy is because we are unable, in a very simplistic way, during the course of each day, to bring the brain waves down. It's
gotcha.
like the NASCAR accident. If you think about this, all day long, our brain is consuming. And at
Mhm.
the end of the day, your brain is not going to store the good thing. Your brain is going to store the negative stuff. So
Exactly.
our baselines are increasing. And so the reason all these numbers are high, I mean, that statistics, which Dr. Daniel Amen has done 100,000 brain scans, not on athletes, but in general. And he has found, again, like I said earlier, the average EEG in a person today, through no fault of their own, is that of a schizophrenic patient in the 1950s. That should worry everybody. And so the answer to that is, and maybe this is a good segue, because we have to make things simple.
Yes.
So what I would ask golfers and instructors alike is to position golf as a target sport. That's it. The
Okay.
objective is to send the ball somewhere. And the number one barrier to the target, because in golf, every shot you're looking down. You're not looking at the target. In basketball, you're looking at the basketball. In football, I'm throwing the football somewhere. There's always, a line to the target, but in golf, I am not. If that target is lost, which is, again, a human condition now, because the brainwave, there's so much traffic in the brain. So these are the two very simplistic definitions I'd like to give you, your audience.
Yes.
So mental strength, which is a term we all want, it is simply your ability to make the right adjustment. That's
Gotcha.
it.
Mhm.
And the right adjustment is always get your brain waves down. You may not know what the answer to everything in life is. Every problem that you ever face in life, not just golf, every problem, no matter how complex, you may never know what to do about all of it, but you should always know what to do first. And what to do first is get your brain to green. And so pressure, this thing about pressure and choking, oh my gosh, it's very simple. Pressure is nothing more than high quantity of brain waves and high intensity of brain waves. So therefore, what is the opposite of pressure? The opposite of pressure is low quantity of brain waves and low intensity of brain waves. So these simple definitions take away the complexity of trying to make the right adjustment. So I don't know that you can be a high-performing person or an athlete without having a very high self-awareness of the thoughts that are in your brain.
Gotcha.
Because if you have a negative thought, that doesn't mean something's wrong with you. No. That just means you're a human being like me.
Mhm.
But can you quickly make the adjustment? And people that make the right adjustment are going to be people that are going to perform at a high level consistently.
Yeah.
They're not people who are going to have the perfect swing and the perfect stroke. And it's all about the right adjustment.
I've long said, and this is coming from a golf instructor, okay? maybe my level of schizophrenia is high because I'm outselling myself. I always say to folks, I'm like, if I've done my job of teaching you, coaching you properly, I will put myself out of business as a coach
Oh, yeah.
because you begin to understand who you are, what your tendencies are, mental and physical, and then you're on your way and you can identify a situation and then rectify self. That's number one. And then number two, I'm always stressing to people that it's golf at its core is very, very simple. It's not easy and it's very simple. And in the interests of getting better, I think a lot of us then gravitate to the golf instructor and go, well, okay, golf teacher, what must I do physically?
Yes.
And then I'm like, look, the game is simple. It's a game. But I feel like changing your golf swing is basically the lazy man or the intellectually lazy way of fixing things. It's coming
Yes.
from a deeper place, and that's what you're beginning to prove to
Yes.
me, thankfully. So I'm realizing I wasn't crazy in trying to preach this stuff,
No.
because I sometimes say that to people and like, you're nuts. I can groove my golf swing, and I'm like, you cannot groove your golf swing. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I highly respect and applaud your style because that is the right style. My father was a medical doctor. I am not. And he used to tell us when we were kids that my job is to make sure my customers do not come back to me.
Yeah.
And I share that philosophy. So Mark, I'll share another secret of my professional life. By far and away, the biggest surprise of my professional life, not personal life, my professional life, is watching so many good people. I'm talking about good people here,
Mhm.
hardworking people, spending so much time solving the wrong problem.
Yeah. You're preaching. You're reverend.
It's tragic.
Reverend Justice.
You know,
Yeah.
if you practice making 3 and 5 foot putts all week long and you're making them, and then you go out on the course and you start missing them, the fix is not that you go work some more on your 3 and 5 foot putts. Clearly, there's something about your brain while you're on the course playing that's the real problem. And let me show you one last picture, and I'm not going to go through these videos.
All right.
So on the screen, you see two young men, and I have the brain machine on them. And you can see on the left that this kid's baseline
Shut up.
EEG
Yeah.
is so red.
Yeah.
And you can see on the right side that this kid is very well. So here's a big lesson that I can give instructors of golf, is that for the kid on the left, which you will never know, but you can figure it out. 1 hour lesson for this kid, or even 30-minute lesson for this kid, is way too much.
Yeah. He won't handle it. Mm-hmm.
His brain cannot absorb anything because his baseline is so high. If you give him more than one thing to work on, he will go crazy. For this kid, he needs to just go play, 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 play. Because the change in the golf course, which is the beauty of golf, right? Every hole is geospatially different. That changing stimuli will bring his brain waves down. For this kid over here, you can give him all the instruction in the world. He's ready. He can absorb it. He will retain it. So your job, I think every instructor's job right now, whether you want this or not, and I'm sorry to communicate this, is that you are first and foremost a mental coach. Because if you're teaching something and your student doesn't get it, that doesn't mean that you said the wrong thing. That means their brain is in the left state over here. And so you have to do something to put them back to green. So the first part of every lesson should be, is my client, is my golfer in green? And knowing that every 3 seconds it's going to change, you should be constantly measuring, where is this person's attention? Where is their focus? Because the answer is not telling you the same thing 20 times over in 20 different ways, hoping one of them sticks with you. Mm-hmm. If you get someone to green, it doesn't matter what you say. Their brain will absorb it.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to the fundamental premise. The first part of every problem in life is to get your brain and somebody else's brain to green. Because if your brains are operating at 80%, magic will happen. If, as an instructor, you are green and your client is red, that's a disaster.
Yeah.
And it's not because they're bad people. It's not. It's because they just broke up with their girlfriend or their boyfriend, or, my mother passed away in May, and I measured my own EEG for 60 days after my mom died. My baseline EEG went up by 20 hertz.
Really?
I feel that my attention went down and down and down. I couldn't concentrate because in random situations, I'm thinking about my mom.
You know what? I look at that. What you say is so savvy. But I look at that illustration, and you've got, for the folks listening, 3 brains, and there's 80% green, and then the middle brain is 40% green, and there's little bits of yellow and little dots of red in there, and then you've got 5% red, which there's a whole bunch of green and little dots red and little dots of green everywhere. But I look at 80% green, and you're like, this is their sweet spot, and I feel like, man, that's only 80%. It's not 100%, so you don't have to be perfect to be really operating at your super level,
Absolutely. And just remember, in a round of golf, let's say 4.5, 5-hour round of golf, you only actually over the ball for less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, right.
So you don't I tell people, let your mind wander to a good place between shots. Go ahead. Think about vacations, think about friends, think about brides and cookouts and World Cup and those kinds of things. Send your brain intentionally to a good place as opposed to letting it do what it wants to do. But then when you start your routine, start to use those neuro hacks, because the goal, again, I will tell you, target is king, target is king. If you have a target in your head, your body will naturally adjust to whatever needs adjustment and send the ball there being the target, whether it's a driver, a 3-wood, an iron, a chip, a putt. Golf is a target sport where your eyes are not on the target. If your brain is not holding the target, all kinds of flaws are going to show up, like muscle sequencing, your hips will fly up, your transition will be too fast, you'll hit it harder or softer, and you won't even know where you're hitting it. So again, the first fix before you change someone's stroke or technique is, did they make that mistake when they were in red or when they were in green?
Okay. At the risk of pronouncing it wrong, it's gyro golf, correct?
Yes, GYRA golf, yes.
Okay, gyro. So folks can go to gyrogolf.com. But you've referenced some of the neuro hacks. Obviously, you've got courses and classes, and there's a book that you wrote as well. I want to talk about that some. But you've referenced a neuro hack. So I don't know if you feel that way inclined, but how about teasing someone with us so they can go out and try it on the golf course this afternoon or in practice or whatever? When you had Joaquin over the putt and you threw the ball at him and his brain lit up, and then you saw him start to calm things down mentally and lower the frequency and the intensity of the brain waves. What neuro hack did he use? I'm very interested.
Okay. All right. So do you by chance have a club anywhere near you? I'm going to do one on you.
One sec.
A putter or a wedge or anything.
I've got
there we go.
a
Fantastic.
very old school driver. Look at that thing for the folks watching.
Persimmon. Yeah, I love that. Okay, I want you to grip the club. Okay.
There we are.
Now, don't start. Please don't start until I fully explain it to you.
Okay.
And then when I explain it to you, I will say go. So don't start doing it until I explain it to you. Okay. So this hack is called the 10-2. So let me explain what that means. When I say go, which is not now, don't do it now. When I say go to 10, I want you to squeeze the living daylights with both of your hands, the grip on that club.
Yeah.
I will only have you do it for about 3 to 4 seconds. And that maximum tension, and I do mean maximum, that you're squeezing that club with on a scale from 1 to 10 should be 10. Then I will say go to 2 after about 3 or 4 seconds. And when I say go to 2 on that scale from 1 to 10, I want you at the end to feel a little bit of tension there. But here's the key, and this is important, Mark. I want you to slowly, like literally as slow as you can, reduce the tension from 10 to 2. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And go. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Go to 2.
Okay.
All right, let's do that one more time. I want you to go to 2 a little bit slower. All right.
All right. Oh, I must tell you when I'm at 2.
Yes.
Okay, right.
And go. Squeeze, 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 squeeze. Slowly to 2.
Okay.
All right. What did 10 feel like?
Oh man, I could almost feel like my veins in my head were popping.
All right. What did 2 feel like?
Relaxed. There's still pressure in my fingers, but the downward force on the club has gone away. So there's pressure held in my fingers, which is something I teach, but that sort of manhandling, sorry, bad term, but,
no,
but
how do you feel? You said relaxed, right?
Yeah, more relaxed. My neck and my shoulders relaxed. The clenched jaw went away. You know, everything up here kind of eased off a little.
Yes. So it takes about 7 to 8 seconds to do one of those.
Yeah.
What you just did there is the equivalent of 20 minutes of meditation or yoga.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Now, you won't have the physical effect of yoga and meditation, but what you basically did was you high-powered your brain intentionally, and then you brought it down slowly. So we intentionally increased the brain waves. Now, the brain is a slave. It didn't know that because you slowed down intentionally, it now knows that you're not in real danger. So it resets your entire brain. And here's the best part of it. That 10-2 that you just did it's going to bring your brain waves down for as minimum as 5 minutes, for as long as 20 minutes. So one of the things that I teach people is that if you go to a hole and it's a very tight fairway, or you just made double bogey or triple bogey, you know, this is something that you can do with your club as you're walking to the next tee shot.
Wow.
So that's another example. And we also have an app. It's called the Jira app. And in there, we have dozens and dozens of other of these types of things. But the beauty of them is they don't take very long.
Yeah.
And you can do them wherever you are. There's no equipment that you need. There's no tool. And the reason we know that they're the equivalent of 20 minutes of yoga and meditation is because we have measured them.
That's the, yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you that because that popped in my head because, you know, I've had some physical battles, and something, maybe my spirit inside, made me go and start taking cold plunges. And over the last few months, and I'm digressing, but I guess it gets back to that holistic thing, and everything centers out of the brain. You get in freezing water and there's panic, and you can sense the tighten up, but then you know, the I don't want to say discipline because it sounds forced, but that ability to sort of relax in the panic-filled, pressure-filled environment into just focusing on the breathing. I feel like it's helped me physically throughout the day, and I've noticed that like blood pressure readings and stuff have improved. Am I in the same tack here?
You're absolutely right, but again, you must understand what's going on, because we have measured all of that. When you put yourself in that type of a situation, first of all, your brain knows that it's not a real danger, and two, it basically shuts excuse me, it basically shuts your brain off from processing the past or the future, because it's very busy managing that sudden coldness, which is what the 10-2 does. Remember, the high levels of EEG that we're experiencing is because our brain is the only place where the past and the future can come anywhere in the universe.
Yeah.
And the past and the future have very high intensity of quantity and intensity of brain waves. So things like that, anything that can allow your brain to be in that present moment, that's why I think holding the target is so powerful. Holding the target in your brain while you're hitting golf shots is meditation.
Yeah.
The target is not a judgment. It's just a flag. It's just a bunker. It's just a fairway. It's just a green. It's not an enemy. Whereas if you say, oh, you know, I've missed 3 fairways and I got to hit this one, or I got to stripe this 3 wood, or I got to do that. Now you're living in the past. But golf, and especially putting, can be incredibly meditative.
Yeah.
If you simply try to invest your time and discipline in holding the target. We spend too much time taking the target. Most targets are fairly obvious, especially tee to green. You know where the fairway is and you know where the green is. It's like, so, but we spend so much time taking it, we don't spend any time holding it.
Yes.
And you can practice holding it. And the idea of trying to hold something in the present moment is meditation. When you think of the yogis in Nepal and all these famous yogis from thousands of years ago, they're sitting down in front of a tree looking at a leaf for an hour. And they bring their brainwaves down to 0. It's magical what they do, but golf gives you an opportunity to do that. Golf does not have to be hard. Unfortunately, we make it hard because, like I said, we fix the wrong things. We think that the fix is technique. We think that it's the grip. We think that it's the putter. And again, please forgive me if you're an instructor. I am not judging you. I am not saying that there isn't improvement in technique and those kinds of things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when you're playing golf, the king is holding the target.
Yeah.
Just go play. Mark, try this. When you just go play 5 holes this afternoon or tomorrow, and the only thing that I want you to think about is target and see if you can hold it. I promise you, no matter what you shoot, you'll come back feeling the same way that you did, like you were in that cold tub.
And holding the target is keeping the visual of it in the mind. Like I'm imagining a yellow flag right now. You know, is that holding the target as opposed to just having a look, cursory glance and coming back to the golf ball?
Yeah. So our target can be anything. Our target can be a trajectory. Our target can be a cloud. Our target can be a line. Our target can be an entry point. Our target can be a spot on your line. So the brain loves solving things.
Yeah.
And I tell people when they come to see me, especially for putting, because I do teach putting, is why are you limiting your brain to only one type of a target? Because in golf, there's no short game shot that is going to be identical, because geospatially you're in a different location. If you have three 5-foot putts on consecutive holes, they're all 5-foot putts. Well, on one hole, there might be a shadow of a tree that's your target that's over the hole. On another hole, it could be a grain or a blade that's near the cup. On another hole, it could be a clock, like an entry. So it is exciting to me when athletes, golfers call me back and say, you know, I walk into a green with a putter or a wedge in hand, and I say, okay, let me see which target I can hold here.
That's cool. It's amazing you share that, because I've had a lot of success with times, when a golfer's been struggling with a slice, for argument's sake, and we talk technique, and then I'll paint the image in their mind. I'm like, okay, in front of you, I want you to imagine a huge building, a tower with multiple stories. And I want you now to launch the ball through the third story window, and there's 3 of them on the right one. And they'll pull it off right away when they've been hitting the thing through low left the whole time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a famous story that Jack Nicklaus says, and I don't even think that he fully understood what he was doing, but you know that I think it was a 1-iron that he hit on number 17 at Pebble Beach.
Pebble Beach, exactly, yeah.
He hit it to a foot. People say that's one of the best shots ever hit, but if you heard him talk about it, and you would know this because you're much more knowledgeable. Like I said, I'm not a golfer. He said that on his downswing, he felt like something was wrong.
Yeah, he did.
He made an adjustment, right? There's no way that he could have made that adjustment without the target being very clear in his head. He said, okay, where I am in a millisecond is not going to get the ball where I am. And Jack Nicklaus used to say, because he was notorious for just staying over the putt, staying over the putt, staying over the putt, like this kind of bending over. And he said, why would I hit the putt if I'm not sure where it's going to go?
So true.
And that's brilliant. That's what I'm trying to teach people is a lot of times you have to spend years and years and years and practice to figure that out. I'm telling you that the neuroscience corroborates that. When there is a target in your head, your brainwaves go down because a target is not judgmental. A target is not par or birdie or bogey. A target is just a target. And it's in the present moment. And you're trying to hold it.
I love it.
That's good.
Okay, I've kept you for so long. I'm excitable here. You've got plenty of slides. Folks can go to gyrogolf.com. They saw that. Now the final slide, it says the brain. It's all, and all is capitalized in it. And you have an image of the performance iceberg. I'll let you describe that. The folks on YouTube can watch, but just put a bow on it with this slide, please.
Wonderful. And this is a good wrap-up slide. Thank you, Mark, again for having me, my friend. But when you think of an iceberg, you only see what is on top. You don't see the big stuff that is at the bottom. And it's really what is at the bottom. So on top of the iceberg, it's what the eyes see. It's your swing, it's your score. But at the bottom, which is what nobody sees, are all the things that contribute to your baseline EEG, your sleep, your rest, your personal relationships, your health issues, your injury, your past performance, your last round, your playing competitors, your finance, your negative monologues. All of these, they live in the brain. And they are in competition with your ability to hold the target. They contributed to your mind wandering every 3 seconds. Control your mind, and not only will you win the game of golf, but you'll win the game of life.
Wow. This picture tells 1,000 words. It honestly does. And, I was talking about I'm moving my cursor over it for the folks watching on YouTube. And I've said that sometimes golf instructors can lose the forest for the trees and be intellectually lazy because the first thing we do is start carving on the golf swing to make a change there. And that's that shiny, beautiful part of the iceberg above the water. But down in the shadows, sleep, rest, warm up, personal relationship, health, injury, past performance. That's a biggie. Finance, for the aspirant professional who doesn't have the huge bank account. I've seen that. I've lived it with young clients where money is tight. They play differently. They really do, to the guy who's playing free will because the bank account is loaded with money.
Well, Mark, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this. You're a wonderful host, very wonderful collaborative dialogue. It's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure too. For the folks, they can go to the website. What about you? Where can they follow you if they wanted to, social media, certainly, but if they wanted to meet you, have a lesson or whatever, where do they go, please?
Yeah. Well, I will be at the PGA show at the end of January, so in about a month and a half. So I'll be there. You can follow me on social media at Izzy Justice, Instagram and Twitter and all the good stuff. But I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have an indoor studio and an outdoor studio. If you come to see me, mostly for the short game, I don't do any full swing because I don't understand it. But in the short game, I will focus on making you aware of what those different brain waves are, and help you understand how to get to green to make more putts and chips.
Getting to Green with Dr. Izzy Justice. I've just found the name for this podcast. Izzy, it's been fantastic, folks. I would highly recommend that you check this out, that you watch this on YouTube. Thank you so much, my friend. You did a lekker job, to use a South African term, and I look forward to, I hope our paths cross a little bit in the future here, and let's connect, have a braai, and talk a little bit more about it.
I would love it. I would love it. A braai will be on me. Cheers.
All right, take care.